Good morning, my peoples. Good morning to the entire boxing community. Good morning and shout out to the entire Lions Den boxing community. Make sure you subscribe to all their channels. While you're at it, subscribe to my shit too. Fucking I was making this video talking about the ever decreasing stock of Anthony Joshua. And y'all have to forgive me because I just woke up a few minutes ago. But fucking I'm not gonna have time to do a video today, and I want to try to do them as frequently as possible. Like try to do them on the daily if I could. But I got some shit that I gotta do later. I gotta build or get prices on a stairwell that I'm building in my the house that I'm moving into, unfortunately. Fucking so I'm gonna be tied up doing that shit. So more likely than not, I won't do another video later on today. But the nature of the video that I'm doing now has to do with AJ's ever decreasing stock. And the reason that I'm harping on that now is because I said yesterday that, or I said it a couple days ago maybe, that if Team MatchRoom and didn't come out with any statements at all, that I thought that there was a good chance that they would be making a Wilder fight. And yesterday it was reported that Barry Hearn said that he was glad that AJ didn't take the fight even for the $50 million. And then Eddie Hearn said that another statement saying that the pay-per-view numbers, I got a fucking hair in my eye. The pay-per-view numbers didn't do that well, which is kind of like bullshit, because the pay-per-view numbers, as initially reported, were at 350, and I said yesterday that I think that number is gonna go up. And it actually now, as of what the fuck is today? Thursday morning, is being reported that the number actually might be past 400,000, which I believe could be true. When they say 300, because initially they said it was 350 plus. So I'm thinking now that it's being reported that it is plus 400, that it could be well beyond 400. I think they're like kind of like, sometimes they shade certain people with those numbers, to put it lightly. Like when they come out with these numbers, like and I kind of got that. I'm getting that inclination now that the 350 number was the first to come out, and now it's gonna shoot past 400. So if it was 350, like, then, you know, and you're trying to be roundabout, like it's almost like you would expect that for numbers that wouldn't possibly pass 400, and now it is gonna pass 400. So that's some funny style shit right there. So I guess I'll keep you posted, and we'll brace ourselves for the next bit of news. But besides that, though, that is a successful pay-per-view. The initial estimate of the pay-per-view at around 350,000 was around 25 million just off the pay-per-views that was going to be made. If those numbers are at 400,000 at the very minimum, this pay-per-view is going to pull in 30 million bucks. Not factoring in the ticket sales, not factoring in when you talk about views, the theater that they were showing it in, which is kind of like a new thing that I think I've heard of before, but like now it was kind of like heard of a lot when it came to this fight. And also like the PlayStation was offering to watch the fight for the same price as you would buy it on pay-per-view, which was $74.99 US dollars. So those numbers aren't even tallied of yet. Like, this is just going off pay-per-view. Now, the reason I say that Joshua's stock is declining is because and these are going off Sky's pay-per-view numbers for the most part, which Sky is actually the one providing that pay-per-view, so they don't have any reason to give you a lesser number than what the actual number is. If anything, they're going to give you a higher number than what the actual number is. And I think they actually do that, and here's why. Joshua's highest pay-per-views were against Klitschko which was at 1.45 million. So 1,450,000, more or less. But then that's his second highest pay-per-view. And Klitschko's a well-known guy. You know, at that time, that was a huge fight here in America and in the UK. But then his highest pay-per-view is at 1.47 million against Joseph Parker. Now, I think I smell a little bit of bullshit on that one because Joseph Parker is a fucking unknown. Like, you can't tell me that the New Zealand fans, which is where Joseph Parker's from, are gonna account for like a big disparity when already like people were saying that they wanted at that time when he fought Joseph Parker, people were already clamoring for a fucking Deontay Wilder fight at that time. So you're fighting a non-Wilder guy in Parker, and you're fighting a guy that's way lesser known than Klitschko, and you're still surpassing him in pay-per-view numbers. It's a very mild possibility, but I'm sort of calling bullshit on that one. But the reason I say that those numbers are definitely doctored is because Sky's sales for Floyd against McGregor on pay-per-view, which was a humongous event, they have it at 874,000 pay-per-views sold in the UK. And that's a little bit funky because Floyd is, the highest, he's the pay-per-view god. And then you have McGregor, who's from Ireland. I mean, you got a lot of Irish fans in the UK. And in addition to that, I believe that the Irish pay-per-view buys go through Sky anyway. So the whole of Ireland, like per se, if it all goes through Sky, or a good majority of it, then you have Irish fans in the UK. Then you have people like, just because it's a European fighter from the Isles, that would generate some fanfare, or like it would galvanize some people to buy a pay-per-view against the biggest pay-per-view star in the history of the planet. And that does half the numbers of a Joshua, or a little bit more than half the numbers of a Joshua versus unknown Joseph Parker fight. You know, a Joseph Parker that won that belt in a very fugazi fashion. A Joseph Parker who had many people thought, including me, lost to Hiri Fury right before he fought Anthony Joshua. Joseph Parker was a relative unknown for the most part. You know, he had no selling points, and that ended up being a boring fight, which I get, in hindsight, like, people didn't like that fight. I mean, Anthony Joshua, when he was explaining post-fight his performance, I mean, it almost like he was defensive and like trying to explain why it was such a snooze fest. So, that's the fight that's Anthony Joshua's number one pay-per-view selling fight of all time is 1.47 at $25 a pop pay-per-views. 1.47 million at 25 a pop. I think it might be 20 a pop, 20 pounds a pop. But going off that, when you compare that to Deontay Wilder's first foray into the pay-per-view realm, and this is not counting the things I mentioned before with the pay-per-view, with the PlayStation, with the people who watched it in the theaters, with the so-called people that don't support him here in the US, which I believe that to be somewhat true. Like, he don't have like fans or like a lot of these AJ supporters say that Wilder doesn't have fans here. So in spite of all that, Wilder still sold at this current venue 400,000 pay-per-views to AJ's 30 million pay-per-views. Whoever AJ fights next, it's not gonna be Wilder. It's not gonna be Fury. If it's not Wilder and if it's not Fury, AJ stock either stays at where it's at now, which is his highest. When he fought, it could, if it reaches its supposed peak at Joseph Parker's status, when he fought Joseph Parker at 1.47, which I don't think he will do. He's still reaching about the numbers that Deontay Wilder and Fury reached on their pay-per-views, and this was their first time go. If you tally up how much AJ made against Joseph Parker, his highest pay-per-view, that's 36.5 million that Joseph Parker's pay-per-view made, in comparison to Deontay Wilder and Fury's solely pay-per-view numbers at 30 million, about for their first time out, or Wilder's first time out and Fury's first time out here in the U.S. Another thing is that which I'm going to mention now, and why I think that AJ's stock is declining, is in large part, firstly, due to his last performance on pay-per-view, which was against Povetkin. That pay-per-view, and Povetkin and Joseph Parker are both unknowns, but I think Povetkin is a more known than what Joseph Parker is. In addition to the people that back Povetkin have deeper pockets than the people that back Joseph Parker. They were going to pay for Wilder to fight Povetkin for $4 million. But anyhow, that pay-per-view sold 1.1 million. So you go from making 1.47 million to making 1.1 million pay-per-view buys in the UK. Which that's more than 300,000 pay-per-view buy difference from one fight to the next. In addition to that, with all these fights that AJ had in the past, they were selling out in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Like fucking people wanted to see Anthony Joshua more than they wanted to see the coming of Jesus Christ, according to like the MatchRoom camp. But we all know that all those fights that he had before Povetkin sold out in 2 seconds. And the UK enacted a law against sites like Ticketmaster, where people wouldn't get gouged on these reselling of tickets by bigger entities when they would resell these tickets that they bought en masse to the public. Having said that, when you definitely have to factor in as to why those tickets for Anthony Joshua's fights before the Povetkin fight were selling out so fast. When you compare it to the actual Povetkin sales, in which by law they couldn't have secondary sites buy them in mass like that anymore, didn't sell out at all. Like they had to give away 10,000 tickets for that fight in Wembley. People say try to come back with the fact that Wembley is a little bit bigger of a stadium. True, that may be true, but I call bullshit on that too, because if you have an event that sells out in 10 minutes, that's some shit that you could sell 300,000 tickets to, and not have a ticket unsold in the house. You know what I'm saying? So so I call bullshit on that. So just on the premise of all these other fights selling out so fast, supposedly, and his last fight, which was against a non-Wilder or non-Fury opponent, not selling out at all, AJ's ticket sales are in premise declining. Wilder's ticket sales, on the other hand, in addition to Fury's ticket sales, here in the US, I'm pretty sure made very close to what AJ's ticket sales did against Povetkin in the UK. Those tickets, a lot of them go for $20. The cheapest tickets that were posted up for this fight that just happened were like $90 when I was checking on the secondary sites. And this was at a time when they were at a low, when people weren't really buying them like that. At the end, when they filled up the top ring of the Staples Center, those tickets were going for $160 a piece. Now, from most reports, the event was completely sold out. I mean, there wasn't an empty seat in the house as of fight day. In comparison to AJ's fight against Povetkin, whether it be due to rain or them not being able to sell out the event, which they admitted to, the naked eye could see that the event wasn't. I mean, you had a lot of space in the venue, that was vacated. Nobody was sitting in it. So that's a testament, and to like the what's happening with AJ's stock, or AJ's allure, or AJ's sellability within the eyes of the UK public. Right now, I think they're biding their time and like giving them sloth, but the UK public at the end of the day is not going to accept, like I said in the video yesterday, a fight with a cruiserweight potentially next in April with Usyk. They're not gonna really eat up a Dillian White pay-per-view much either, because Dillian White is only has a mouthpiece and is from the UK. That's fine, but Dillian White ain't fight nobody, and he's a shitty fighter who AJ already beat. Their last pay-per-view, when AJ fought Dillian White the first time around, only sold less than 500,000. And if you average out, another thing that I wanted to mention, if you average out AJ's pay-per-views in general compared to Wilder's pay-per-view against Fury, AJ netted way less money on average than what Wilder did in his first time pay-per-view, than the culmination of AJ's pay-per-views. And that's I'll give you AJ's top pay-per-views. If you want to average those out, like they're still like far less than what Wilder made on his first time go at pay-per-view. AJ had pay-per-views against Klitschko, which did 1.4 million. AJ had his last pay-per-view, which was against Povetkin, which did 1.1 million. AJ had pay-per-views against Takam, which was 870,000. And AJ had a pay-per-view against Joseph Parker, which supposedly had 1.47 million. Now, the highest of those is Joseph Parker, like I mentioned earlier, doing 1.47 million, and that's netting him 36.5 million, more or less. All those other ones like bring down that average significantly to where, I mean, if I did the math and you factor other ones, like I said, which were big ones for him against Dillian White, which ended up selling 500,000, like less than 500,000 pay-per-views. So AJ's numbers on average are less than what Deontay Wilder's numbers on pay-per-view are at this current venue. So you got a man in Deontay Wilder whose stock is rising, while you have AJ whose people are starting slowly or not recognizing that him and his camp have been one of the have been the side of the people who are not wanting to push this fight forward between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. So that doesn't help your stock in the grand scheme of things, and that doesn't keep that allure like happen, like where like people are avoiding you, so to say, or where your greatest opposition is avoiding a fight with you, in not only Deontay Wilder but Tyson Fury, because they gave Tyson Fury's camp a heck of a hard time in negotiating with them, to the point that it didn't get that fight didn't get consummated. And you also got to factor too that in a lot of these post fights with AJ had, when the whisperings of Wilder was in the air, where people were asking him specific questions regarding Wilder fights, there were at least 3 or 4 fights, and in which AJ mentioned Tyson Fury first as the opponent that he wanted next, where AJ mentioned Tyson Fury in addition to Wilder, and most times, and I think every time, he always mentioned Fury last. The only time that he talked about Wilder solely, like in one of his post-fights, in one of his post-fight interviews, it was like half-assed, and he got into like fucking talking about everything but a potential fight. So people are starting to see through the veil of a lot of the bullshit that's being sold mostly to the UK public, unfortunately. And this is nothing against like a contention against the UK against America. I think the UK and their fans are good for the sport ultimately, but don't let people who are con artists sell you a bill of goods, which at the end of the day is proven itself to be a load of bullshit. With that, I'm out. Thank you for joining me in the Foul Playland. As always, I'm your DJ Foul Player. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. Make sure you check out all the other fine content that the LDBC channels have to offer you. And peace. Have a good day.